The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All information presented is taken from public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved are used with the utmost respect, and no part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. As a retired homicide investigator, I believe these stories matter to honor the victims, to understand the truth, and to bring closure to the families left behind. Some content may be disturbing to listeners. Discretion is strongly advised. Greetings. I'm Detective Harry Gavel, Sergeant First Class, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, retired. I worked in Camden County, New Jersey. During the times I worked there, often the city would be deemed the murder capital of the nation. It was only 10.34 miles square, but it was a badass place. The Homicide Division of the Prosecutor's Office was very busy. We were getting slammed with homicides left and right. If we weren't working a fresh case that just happened yesterday or today, we were working a case that happened last week. I remember at one point in time I was carrying 12 open homicides in that 1 year. I spent 11 solid years in the homicide department, working first as a floor detective and then later as a supervisor and commander of the Crime Scene Investigative Unit by the time I retired in 2000. I was born and raised in the city of Camden, and that gave me a little bit of an edge. I knew the city like the back of my hand, and from being from the city, I recalled the changes it went through. From a young child growing up in the city streets of Camden, sleeping on the porch, leaving your doors open at night, to not only having to lock your doors, not being dumb enough to sleep on your porch overnight, but to maybe even sometimes have others watching your house to make sure everything in the neighborhood was copacetic. After discharge from the United States Army, and I settled down in a little town called Runnymede, New Jersey. It was 3 square miles large. First, I became a traffic officer there and then a patrolman. Also worked a short time in the Detective Bureau and was eventually made acting sergeant. Now, working in that town for 12 years, I got to know the town of Runnymede pretty well, and I lived in an apartment complex called the Hartford Arms Apartments. I spent 12 years on the police force there and went to the prosecutor's office in 1984. In 1992, I'd be called back to Runnymede, but this time on an active murder investigation. A young woman by the name of Bonnie Lewison, a black female, was found at the end of a string of apartments. Yep, you got it. Hartford Arms Apartments. The end of the apartments led to a stairwell down to the laundry room that the residents of that particular building would use. The victim was found early morning upside down in the bottom of the stairway, nude, except for a tan overcoat that she was wearing. A passerby walking in the area had noticed her there. Homicide Division was called. The entire Homicide Division responded on this morning from the captain on down. The young lady was found to have some sort of a rag in her mouth which was soiled heavily with blood and debris. She was upside down, completely nude. There were obvious signs that she had been brutally attacked. There was obvious signs of blunt force trauma to her head and face and the areas of her eyes. Upon further inspection, we noticed that there was piquerism in place. Piquerism is a term used in the medical field where there are stab wounds close together in a proximity all around the chest in the area of the heart. This is usually an empirical indicator that the person responsible for the attack had some sort of love-hate relationship with the victim. It's not a be-all, end-all, but it is a fact that police look into once piquerism is present. There was no identification of any kind found with the decedent's body. The pockets of the raincoat that she was clad in were empty. The rag in her mouth could not be immediately identified due to the condition of it being heavily soiled with her blood, apparently her blood. Extensive photographs were taken of her in the position she was in at the bottom of the stairwell, just outside of the laundry room, and a canvass was conducted of the residents who lived in that building and the adjacent building. By now, it was getting on to be a little bit late morning, not exactly early morning, and people were expected to not be home when the canvassing took place, as they would possibly be at work or had other activities for the day. Just the same, a canvass was conducted. All notes gleaned from the canvass were turned over to me. I was the lead investigator on the case, and of course it was my old town of Runnymede. Since it was early morning, after the crime scene technicians were complete and the detectives were finished with their tasks on scene, the body was removed by the medical examiner to the Camden County morgue. There, an autopsy was performed that morning, which I attended. I was very curious about the item that was in the victim's mouth. I had it extracted and untied from her mouth, placed on a table. Photographs and measurements were taken. Upon that inspection, I was able to determine that it was a gym sock, generally white with blue and red stripes at the top of it. Usually a male's gym sock, but it could be either male or female. I recall drawing a picture of the sock in my notebook indicating where the blue stripes, the red stripe, and the white stripe was situated at the top of the sock. I didn't know if I would ever need that information, but it was information that I wanted to have, so I drew a picture of it in my police notebook. Back at the scene, we noticed that there was a small, thin trail of blood which led approximately 8 feet topside of where the body was found, made a slight left-hand turn, and then down the stairs where the body was found at the floor of the stairwell. It had no beginning to it. It only had an end. We could not trace from where it came. We could only trace from where it ended up. Crime scene white tape was laid out along the blood trail, which measured it exactly, and photographs were documented. Well, of course, after the crime scene and the removal of the body, and after the autopsy, I returned back to the Hartford Arms Apartments at the scene of the crime where this young lady was found. Runnymede is known as a bedroom community. There were no witnesses around. There was no information gleaned, as I said, from the canvass that occurred earlier. This was now the next day, the next morning. I had nothing on the case. No identification, an unknown black female, stabbed up pretty good, beaten to death, and apparently there was also petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, indicating that she was strangled at some point. The cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma and manual ligature strangulation. Manner of death, homicide. Well, back at the scene here the next day, me being the responsible detective in charge of the case, with absolutely nothing to go on, I decided to observe the area for a time just to see what I could observe. I had nothing particular in mind. It was just a tactic that I thought would help me in understanding the area and the people moving in and about it. I went to the management office and obtained a key to a vacant apartment, which was directly across the street from the string of apartments to where this body had been dumped. I got the key and surreptitiously entered the vacant apartment and just observing out front of the area. I might have been there maybe 40 minutes or so when I noticed a man from across the way in my field of view open up an apartment door in the middle of the apartment complex building there. But he only sticks his head out, looks left, looks right, pokes his head back inside, closes the door. Given the fact that no one answered the door the day before at that apartment, rose a little bit of a red flag for me that I definitely needed to speak to this individual. But before I can even put my notebook away, the same man exits out of the door. Now he's carrying a laundry basket, places it in the trunk of his car, gets in his car, and exits the parking lot. Well, of course, I jump in my car as soon as he's out of view, and I'm following him. We now have a moving surveillance. He travels out of the complex, out to Clements Bridge Road, makes a left-hand turn, goes down Clements Bridge Road toward the Black Horse Pike, where on the right-hand side there's a small laundromat. I believe it's First Avenue. Parks his car in the parking lot in front of the laundromat, gets out of the car, but he doesn't take the laundry basket in with him. He enters the laundromat. He's in there for 2-3 seconds. He exits the laundromat, gets back into his car, and I follow him back to his apartment at Hartford Arms. Parks the car, opens the trunk, takes the white laundry basket out of the trunk, closes his trunk, goes back into his apartment with the white laundry basket. Very curious, very suspicious to me as a homicide detective. But I don't know what's up yet. I don't know the deal. It's just definitely strange behavior. Could be a complete nitwit for all I know. But I'm going to find out. Now, I'm down here on this case by myself. I have no one from Runnymede assigned or attached to me. They had no detectives at this time in Runnymede. But I believe he was chief by now, Mark Diano. And I was planning my next move. Mark and I used to be partners back in the day when I was a working officer in Runnymede. So I decided I'm going to knock on the door. I now have the tag number. I had ran the tag on his vehicle, just like we did all the other vehicles that were available the day before that were parked in the area. But we didn't have a tag number from his vehicle at that time. So now I knew his name, got that from DMV. His name was Mr. Frank Perdue, black male, and the address on his driver's license was in fact the apartment there at the Hartford Arms Apartments in Runnymede, New Jersey. So knowing his name, I came up with my next plan of action. I knock on his door. No answer at first. Number 2, red flag. I give it a few seconds. maybe a little bit more than a few seconds. I know I had knocked loud enough for him to hear me, but the longer he went without answering the door, it was only proving to me that he was trying to avoid whoever was at his door. Plan of action. I open up his mail slot and I yell up, "Yo, Frank!" He had to be thinking, who the hell, who's that? Who knows me? "Come on down, it's Harry. They're going to tow your car." "Yo, Frank." Before I could get another word out, Frank comes piling down the staircase to the front door, opens the door, says, yeah, can I help you? And by now, I'm going to badge him cold. I flip my gold badge out and I say, "Yeah, Harry Gavel, Homicide Unit, Prosecutor's Office. Frank, I see that the police knocked at your door yesterday and you was no one home, so I'd like to talk to you for a minute. We had an incident out here the other day." He said, I worked the night shift at Deluxe Bakery. I said, "Oh, yeah?" He said, "Yeah, I know them guys over there. Know them well. I know the owner, know all his sons." I said, "You don't recognize me, Frank? I was a cop here for 12 years. I worked here in Runnymede." And he's looking at me, trying to act like he knows me, but he has no idea. I've never seen him before. And I asked him if I could come in and speak with him about this incident. He goes, yeah, come on in, come on up. So I follow him up the stairs. I'm careful not to mention exactly what the incident is that I want to speak to him about. There's a reason I'm playing it that way. I want to see if in his nervousness he says anything that could be indicative of his involvement. So as I'm following up the stairs, my eyes are wide open and I'm looking for anything and everything. And lo and behold, the wooden stairs are not carpeted on the face of them, only on the step part. He has like a small pad of carpet on each step part, but not on the face part. And I could see what appears to me to have been remnants of blood drippings that had been wiped, but the edges were still present. That was flag number 3. We reached the top of the stairs, and now I smell a strong odor of bleach in the air. The first thing I see on my left is a bucket with dirty water in it and a mop in the bucket. He walks over. We're now in the living room. He plops down on his couch and he puts both feet on top of an ottoman that's in front of the couch. Now, based on the situation at hand, there's a blood trail, a short blood trail out in front of his apartment, but not exactly in front of it. There's what I believe to be human remnants of blood drippings on the faces of his stairwell. His strange move on his trip to the laundromat and back, and the fact that he hesitated answering the door when I first came, was enough for me to ask him, after I advised him that we were conducting an investigation of a woman found at the end of this apartment complex at the bottom of a stairwell which led to the laundry room, deceased. And the fact that he wasn't home yesterday, we wanted to speak to him about the incident, and I asked him if he'd be willing to speak to us. He agreed that he would be, and I asked him at that time for his verbal permission and would he sign a consent to search form for me so that I could take a look around his apartment. Much to my surprise, he agreed and he signed a consent to search form. However, I knew that this was a very, very serious murder case. There's nothing wrong with the consent to sign search form in place to do my search. But I knew eventually I'd have the crime lab come down here quick and in a hurry and set up camp in this guy's living room to look for any and all evidence, especially that I now had his verbal permission and written permission to conduct a search of his premises. Well, with that, I'm talking to him as he's sitting on the couch. He's got his arms folded in a very defensive posture in my world, and he's answering questions, but I could tell he's being very careful in how he answers my questions, and I'm only asking him general questions. First, we're doing small talk about the owners of Deluxe Bakery. I happen to know them personally, and how long he's worked there, and how long he's lived at the apartments, and, background information of that nature. I'm asking him to identify himself with his date of birth, social security number. I'm getting that down in my notebook. And as we're sitting there talking, I noticed that the ottoman on which his feet are propped are sitting on top of a small square type piece of carpet that had been roughly cut along the edges and placed under the ottoman. It was a different color than the carpet in the living room, and it looked odd. It looked out of place. That was another small flag. And as we're there talking, he finally gets off of the couch and he's walking me around his apartment as I'm going into each area and searching through it. When I get into his bedroom, I see the white laundry basket atop the end of his bed. But before I get there, I see a clump of black hair just outside the bathroom door, which appears to be black female hair. I see some female personal belongings in the bathroom, being a brush, a comb, and some very basic beauty supplies, like I think there was a lipstick canister there. In his bedroom, I see a woman's purse hanging on the doorknob behind the door. And I ask him if he's married or if he has a girlfriend. He's not answering the question too good. He just tells me that once in a while, he has a lady friend come by. What's her name? He gives me some off-the-wall name. It was so off-the-wall that I don't even recall it at the moment. But he's trying to make excuses why there are things belonging to a female in his apartment that I'm noticing as I'm conducting my search. And he's just trying to fill in the blanks the best he can. But I can tell it's very awkward for him, and he's getting very nervous, and he's very concerned. So now we focus on the basket in his bedroom sitting atop his bed. And I notice it's got a bunch of clothes in it. The clothes appear to be that of a woman, and they appear to be soiled with brown stains that appear to me like it could be human blood. I get down to the bottom of the basket, and lo and behold, there is one gym sock. So I grab my notebook, I flip it open, I go to the page where I drew, indicating the pictures of where the colors were on that particular sock that we found in the victim's throat. And they're the same. The blue and red and white stripes are the same position on that sock in the laundry basket as the sock found in the victim's mouth. So now I know where the other sock is, but I don't mention that to him. I break into my Columbo mode. I'm going to have fun for a minute here. I say, you know, Frank, as I put my index finger on my right hand up to my forehead and then I start rubbing it and I go, you know, my wife has the same problem for me. Every time she does a load of laundry with my socks and whatever in the bag, when we get it back, I'm always missing a sock. I mean, does this washing machine eat socks? Like, what's the deal with that, Frank? Can you do me a favor, Frank? Let's just take a few minutes here, look around, and see if you can find this other sock. It's really bothering me now. I see this too much in my own personal life. Maybe you can help me out here, Frank. Maybe we could figure something out here together. We'll put our heads together, knowing all well the full time. Oh, I know where that other sock is. And man, I am stoked. I'm ready for bear here. I know I got my man now. So he starts playing around with the laundry basket. He acts like he's looking around the room. I say, come here, Frank. I said, listen, you know, I told you I used to be a cop in this town a long time ago. And I feel like you're like one of my homeboys now. And you know, sit down, Frank. I'm going to talk to you a minute. I advise him of his rights, and he waives them. He agrees that he'll speak with me, and I start my pursuit. I have him seated now back on the couch, and he's looking at me with this puppy dog face, and I actually feel a little bad for the guy. And I say, Frank, you and me, we both know where that other sock is, Frank. He don't say a word. I'm just looking at him. And I said, do you want to tell me, Frank, where that other sock is? He's still not answering me. And I say, Frank, I know where the other sock is, Frank. It's in that lady's mouth that we found down there at the laundromat floor. Did you have anything to do with that, Frank? What happened? Tell me the story. Well, he doesn't say nothing, but his body language says it all. I mean, he just folds, drops his head, drops his arms down to his side. He's shaking his head. I thought he was going to vomit. He's like, appears to be sick to his stomach. And he says, well, she was robbing me, man. I said, talk to me, Frank. What happened? He said, well, you know, I was sleeping on the couch, and I heard something woke me up. I look up, and she's here on the floor, and right here, right in front of the couch here. She's going through my pants and going through my wallet, trying to rob me. So I just lost it, man. So, well, what happened? What, you know, tell me the story. What happened? Well, you know, I jumped up out of the couch. I grabbed my bat. And I, you know, hit her with my bat. And, what else happened? Well, you know, I choked her up a little bit. And yeah, but Frank, you know, she's got stab wounds in her chest. You know, what happened there? Well, you know, I cut her. I couldn't help myself, man. I went crazy. I lost it. I said, well, how'd she get down there at the end of the stairwell there? He said, well, you know, I waited for a little bit till it got dark, late dark. And then I looked outside and I didn't see nobody out there, so she didn't have no clothes on because, you know, right before that, we had sex. And then I dozed off on the couch, but when she didn't have no clothes on, I had to put her in something, so I put my raincoat on her. And I took her down out of the apartment, carried her down there. And I laid her at the top of the steps and she rolled down to the bottom. And then I came back here. So I said, well, tell me something, Frank. He said, you took a ride to the laundromat earlier out here today. I followed you down there, Frank. Oh, you saw me go there? I said, yeah, I saw you, Frank. I was right behind you. You didn't see me. But I've been sitting out here watching your place for a while. And I followed you to the laundromat down there on Clements Bridge Road. Tell me the story, Frank. What happened when you went there? You left the laundry basket in the trunk of the car. You didn't bring it in. He goes, well, when I got in there, I went in there to first look to make sure there was nobody in there because, I don't want nobody to see me. I was going to leave her laundry in a washer and just leave it there. Come back here. But when I went in there was a lady in there. So I don't want her to see me leave anything in the washer, so I just left. I figured I'd go back another time. I said, okay, well, that explains that. I said, but Frank, let me ask you another question, just because I'm curious. I like to talk to people after to find out why they do certain things. It helps me with other cases and such, but where's the bat that you hit her with? Oh, I had got rid of that. I dumped it out in the creek there. He's talking about the Newton Creek over there on Clements Bridge Road. And he tells me the story about this lady. He said he used to have her come to his apartment every weekend. He would go down to Camden and pick her up. She was a prostitute, and her name was Bonnie Lewison. And she used to come up there and stay with him every weekend because he was off. And then he would take her back to Camden late on a Sunday night because he had to go in the next night on the midnight shift on Monday. But, she would stay up there every weekend with him. She was like his girl. He had feelings for her. That explains the piquerism. That's why he went after her heart. So I asked him, Frank, where's the knife that you used on her? He said, that's in my car. I said, in your car? He said, yeah. I said, well, you threw the bat away. How come you didn't throw the knife away? He goes, oh, man, that's my favorite fishing knife. His favorite fishing knife. He couldn't part with it. We ended up finding it exactly where he said he put it, on the passenger side door sill, just underneath the carpet there. When it was tested at the lab, it came back positive for blood matching Bonita, and we were able to confirm that that was in fact the murder weapon. By now I had called Chief Mark Diano down to the scene and advised him that I had notified the office and the crime scene was on the way down. I notified some officials there at the Prosecutor's Unit that I had a confession that I was working on and I needed the crime lab to come to my location to do a forensic search and to bring luminol. They did. When they got there, they set up their process for examining the property. They used ultraviolet light, sprayed luminol in the apartment, and it lit up like a Christmas tree. As a matter of fact, like 3 Christmas trees. We found large swatches of what appeared to be human blood and tested positive for the human blood characteristics. Everything was documented, measured. His bloody long johns were found behind the refrigerator in the kitchen. More clumps of her hair was found. Hefty black trash bags were found in his closet, blood soaked with her clothing. Additional personal items were found, including her identification, which was found in her purse in his apartment. Mr. Perdue was transported to the Camden County Prosecutor's Office by myself and Lieutenant Greg Butari. There, we took him into an interview room where I again advised him of his constitutional rights, which he waived again in writing, or he was shown his previous waiver, and it was documented on the tape recorder statement that he was issued his constitutional rights and waived the same, and a full confession was obtained from Mr. Frank Perdue by me, and he was convicted, and I believe he got life in New Jersey State Prison. You know, looking back at this case, it's ironic that I started on the police department in 1972. Never fathomed at that time that I would end up working a murder 20 years later in the same town where I started my police career and solving a very vicious murder that happened in the apartment complex where I lived back in 1972. The end. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, retired. Stay tuned for more episodes from the Murder Capital. See you next time.